Welcome into Minnesota Vikings Now. I am Tom Downey with both some fresh Vikings trade rumors as the deadline is roughly 24 hours away, give or take, depending on when you're watching, and some Vikings injury news as well. Before we break that down, keep subscribing so the Vikings keep winning. We have the data, and the science. It's all backed by it from doctors you can trust and scientists you can trust, that when you subscribe, the Vikings are more likely to win football games, so keep subscribing and don't jinx that very impressive and I still think underrated nationally winning streak right now for Minnesota. Some unfortunate injury news. Stop me if you've heard this before. Irv Smith is hurt again. Initial belief is a high ankle sprain for the Vikings tight end. The team is still going to sort out the timeline per ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, but there is a good chance he ends up missing some game action. High ankle sprains go anywhere from, maybe a week to upwards of 6 weeks, depending on the actual severity of it. Unfortunately for Irv Smith, well, he's been hurt many a time before, and it does leave Minnesota thin at tight end, where they've gone thin at the beginning of the season, right? Johnny Munt, Ben Ellefson are the other options there. Nick Muse is on the practice squad. He could be a prime game day call-up from that standpoint to try to add some depth at that position and make sure that they're in okay shape. But Irv Smith injured, and we'll tie in tight end to some more trade rumors and targets out there for Minnesota. We begin with Brandin Cooks, and this one is interesting as there is a report out there, actually reports, including one from ESPN, that the Vikings have inquired about a potential Brandin Cooks trade with the Houston Texans, which I find quite interesting. That report also mentioned that Cooks only wants to go to a contender, which I think makes sense because, he's been stuck in Houston for a couple years. He wants to win football games. Cooks has not been as dynamic as he has been in the past. He's getting a little bit up there in age. What does complicate matters is that Houston just paid Brandin Cooks. They gave him a big extension. He's got a fully guaranteed $18 million deal next year, but the Vikings are clearly at least somewhat in the market for more receiver help. Maybe more of a long-term option if you potentially at least redo the deal for Adam Thielen in the offseason. There clearly is some wide receiver interest. Let's talk Chase Claypool. Speaking of wide receiver interest of the Pittsburgh Steelers currently, there is a report that Minnesota's at least checked in. Darren Wolfson, one of the Minnesota local reporters, said this, quote, "I have heard that there has been chatter with Pittsburgh. I don't say anything is on the cusp, that it has been serious dialogue, but my understanding is they have at least made an inquiry on Claypool." I think this starts to make some sense, right? Obviously, Justin Jefferson is one of the best wide receivers in the entire NFL. He's putting up just bonkers numbers almost every single week. Adam Thielen is kind of lesser production, but it's on par with Brandin Cooks this year, which Thielen's getting older. KJ Osborne, similar to Irv Smith, but now Irv Smith's banged up. I think a third is about the right value for Chase Claypool. I've heard a lot of different reports that that's what Pittsburgh wants, that they want the Christian McCaffrey package. It's all kind of interesting from that standpoint. We'll see what happens at receiver. I'm unconvinced either guy gets dealt, but those are two names clearly connected to Minnesota. So if you had to trade for one, who would it be? BC for Brandin Cooks or CC for Chase Claypool? This is the pinned comments on today's video. You should know the drill if you've been subscribed for a long time. If the ad break comes, take advantage. BC or CC at the pinned comment. With Irv Smith once again unfortunately banged up, how about a tight end that I'm pretty darn confident is on the trade block? Albert Okwuegbunam. That is Albert O for short because that's a tricky last name there. With Irv Smith banged up, at least short term, you're probably in the market for some tight end help. Do we really trust guys like Ben Ellefson and Johnny Munt to start at the position? If you want to block, and that's fine, but I think you're a bit concerned there. Albert O, meanwhile, has very much fallen down his own tight end depth chart in Denver. Greg Dulcich, the second-round pick from UCLA, has taken over, and the Vikings don't really have an actual pass-catching option with Irv Smith banged up. Johnny Munt, Ben Ellefson, that's not how I would describe their game. And I think if we're all being honest, that is something we would pretty much agree with. So with Irv Smith banged up, with the interest in wide receivers already, I think the Vikings should look to make another move for a weapon. I think that's an intriguing idea. And in the modern NFL, you want talent. You want the ability to stretch the field, make big plays, explosive plays, and keep pushing against the defenses you'll face in the postseason that are much better. Eagles, Niners, Cowboys, all really good defenses this year. You'll want to have some more playmakers and give yourself as many options when you play better football teams. Yeah, you could drop a bunch of points on the Cardinals, who probably aren't a playoff team this year, but you want more talent for when things get tougher. So what is your confidence level in the current tight end room as it sits? 1 to 10. That is our scale today. Let me know in the comments. 1 on the low end, 10 on the high end. Let's talk some defense now. We begin with a cornerback in Bryce Hall, the former, or I should say current Jets corner, who played a lot last year. Then the Jets got DJ Reed and they got Sauce Gardner. They're like, yeah, Hall's good, but these guys are better. And they were right to make that move there. Hall, I do think, is available via trade if you want some cornerback help. Minnesota this year has still not been that good. The yards are a little bit high. The passing yards are high, in part because they're winning a lot of games. Teams are throwing on them. That is understandable. You got to always remember the correlation and the causation, etc. The points per game are about average. I'll take that, but the yards are a bit of a red flag. I think the defense has been better as of late, but when you start playing some better teams that can throw the football downfield, that is potentially a red flag, especially if you're aiming super high with your expectations this year, which at this point, I think the Vikings should be. They're awesome so far this year. Now, Bryce Hall in 2021 was pretty solid. A little high on the yards, not outlandishly high. 14 pass breakups as well. I am curious how he would fit in the Vikings' defensive scheme. I think it would be a good enough fit. He kind of fell out of favor in New York because they added more talent. I think he's a good under-the-radar trade chip for a team like Minnesota to consider. Now, today's show is made possible by our sportsbook partner, BetUS. Head over to chatsports.com/bet and use promo code CHAT125 for a 125% deposit bonus. Chatsports.com/bet, promo code CHAT125. Go put $5 down. When you put $100 down, you get your deposit bonus on Vikings minus 3.5. Have we watched the Commanders play football, Vegas? They're not a good team. They're not. They snuck by the Colts. I get it. Heineken led a great game-winning drive, but Indy's not a good football team. Minnesota is. I love Minnesota minus 3.5 this week. I do not believe in the Commanders. Give me the Vikings. You can bet with me when you go to chatsports.com/bet and you use promo code CHAT125 for a 125% deposit bonus. Another cornerback name who I like quite a bit is Sean Murphy-Bunting, the Bucs corner, who has not played a lot this year, which I find interesting. He kind of fell out of favor. He's played inside and outside. The PFF grades are really good. Again, small sample size. He's just not playing as much this year for Tampa. He's battled injury problems in the past. Coming off last week's game, or I should say Sunday's game, so yesterday, right? I thought Patrick Peterson, Cam Dantzler played very well. Chandon Sullivan, maybe not so much in the slot, and that's what's nice about Murphy-Bunting. He has both inside and outside position flex. So that's a perfect, worst case number 4 corner for you, right? You can play him in the nickel. You can play him on the outside. He adds depth at minimum. I don't know how expensive he would be. He's a former second-round pick who's made some big plays in the past, but for whatever reason, for a strangely bad Bucs team this year, at least maybe not good Bucs team. They've been banged up, I know, but they started the year so hot and kind of collapsed since then. If you could get Murphy-Bunting at a reasonable cost, I think it'd be a great pickup for a Vikings team in the market for more cornerback help, more defensive help in their attempts to really elevate that team from, hey, they're a good football team. Can they join the ranks of the elite and become a true, obvious Super Bowl contender when not everyone is believing in them in the same fashion that I know producer Patrick is? So do you trust the Vikings secondary? Simple question, right? Why for yes and for no? I have some doubts right now. I think this is a team that's not put together a full game yet, as I've talked about with producer Patrick before. Yet they've won a lot of games despite it. So sound off, Y or N. If the Vikings make a trade, you know we will break it down. Hit that subscribe button right now, youtube.com/Vikings today. Free videos almost every single day when you hit that big red button or the black and white button. Since YouTube is making some changes, hit that subscribe button either way.